Welcome to Hutchinson Economic Developments. My name is Miles Seppold. I'm the Economic Development Director for the city. In today's episode, we're going to have project updates for you, let you know what's going on around town. And then in the second segment, we're going to talk about the data center project that's coming to Hutchinson. And then finally, in our last segment, we'll talk a little bit about the state of the city and how we compare with other cities our size. So let's get started with project updates. Biggest one out there right now obviously is the landing, and this project is moving forward pretty quickly, weather permitting. And so I went out and took a couple pictures here just the other day just to let you know how it's coming along. So here in this picture, this I took on the west side of the site looking to the east, and they have a whole bunch of framing stacked up there. That's all going to be the second story of apartments in this building. What they do is they put together this framing in the factory, and it's all prefabricated, and then they'll just bring it out by truck and deliver it to the site, and that's where it gets assembled. So that helps speed up the construction process. So here's a picture just looking southeast across the building, and so that first level, that's going to be drive-in parking, and then that upper level, that's the first story of apartments. Here's a view looking at the building from the southwest corner, looking down First Avenue, and Main Street would be off to the right in the very back of the picture. And you can see again, they got the first level is the garage, and then the upper level, they have all those window cutouts. Those will be apartments. That's the first story of apartments. And then one thing you can notice there on the very top, they have all the trusses in place, and that's going to set the stage for building that second story of apartments. Here's another picture. This is just from the southeast corner of the building looking to the northwest. So the Crow River is directly behind it. And again, you can see the trusses on the top. That just signals that they're getting very close now to putting the second level of apartments on this building. So that could be going up almost any day now, I think. Finally, here's a picture of the building from Main Street. North end of Main Street, just looking to the southwest. So when this building is done, it's going to be about twice as tall as what you see there. So it's going to be very noticeable as this thing takes shape. So everything's on schedule. Right now they're planning to open this thing up late fall, early winter, and it'll be quite a revolutionary change for the downtown. It'll be fun to watch this take shape. Another project that's happening, there's another apartment project coming into Hutchinson. This is going to be on the north end of town on North High Drive, the former Burns Manor site. And what it's going to be a 3-building complex, and it's going to be about 144 market rate apartments. So this will be built in 3 phases, I think. So they'll build one building, maybe about 40 apartments or so, or 45. They'll get that filled up, build the second building, and then build the third building. So this is going to kick off, I believe, this summer, 2026. Should go up relatively quickly. So this will go a long way toward helping us meet our housing shortage here in Hutchinson. Here's a view of what it could look like. This is sort of a conceptual view. It just shows the 3 buildings, and you can see the garage is there in the very back. So the actual design will probably be somewhat different, but this is the basic layout. And again, this will be taking place on North High Drive, on the north end of town. So another good addition here for Hutchinson and help us meet our housing shortage. Turning now to the Hotel Jorgensen, this project is moving ahead. Not a lot to see yet from the outside, but right now they're busy doing all the preliminary work that they need to do internally. And a lot of that is just looking for and testing for various hazardous materials, because all that stuff has to be removed first before the building gets taken down. Hazardous materials cannot go to a normal landfill, has to go to a special landfill, so they have to take all that out before they really begin the large-scale demolition. So right now, I think they're projecting March is when the wrecking ball will come, and that's when this will change pretty dramatically. Here's a couple pictures on the inside that I took a week or two ago, just to show some of the hazardous materials. On the left, on the window there, you can see the window caulking. A lot of times that has asbestos in it. So that's all going to have to be scraped out and removed. And then on the right, there's a picture on the floor. The floor has some sort of a coating on it that could conceivably have asbestos in it. So that needs to be tested and might end up having to be removed before they can begin demolition. And then there's lead paint from old windows. There's mercury in light switches and so forth that needs to be removed, formaldehyde, etc. So they've got probably 4 or 5, 6 weeks of work to do just to remove all those hazardous materials. And then I think sometime in March, that's when the large-scale demolition will take place. The other news item, Guiding Light Early Learning Child Care Center, that's open for business, and they have slots available right now for preschool and school-aged children. So if you need child care services, or someone in your family, or you know somebody that needs child care services, Guiding Light is enrolling right now, and the number is there on the bottom of your screen. That's it for the updates. Stay tuned. In our next segment, we will talk about the Hutchinson Data Center project, which is coming up this year. Welcome back to Hutchinson Economic Developments. In this segment, we're going to talk about a data center project that's coming to Hutchinson. I set this up as a series of questions that I have received, so we're just going to go through a bunch of questions and I'll do my best to answer them for you. Probably the first, most obvious question is, well, what's a data center? What is that? And really what it boils down to is just a building with a lot of computers in it. It's computer systems, it's servers, it's data storage. Really, that's about it. Just a big building with lots of computers. Why are data centers needed? Right? Because this is a new thing and these things are popping up all over the place. Why do we need these things? Well, it goes way beyond artificial intelligence or cryptocurrency or any of that stuff. The reality is that in our modern society, banks store a lot of our data. They have a lot of data that they need a place to keep it, so that's where data centers come in. Same thing with hospitals with respect to medical records and all that. Insurance companies need a lot of data storage. And then even just you and I and people everywhere, I mean, it's pretty common nowadays that you will keep your photos online. You'll upload them to the cloud or wherever. A lot of people have a lot of photos on Facebook and all kinds of things, YouTube, all that type of thing. It just requires lots and lots of storage space. And all those things together and more, that's the reason why we have data centers. Not everybody, but most people have a smartphone nowadays. That necessitates data centers. And so these things are becoming more and more prevalent, and they will become even more prevalent as we go forward, because the need for data is just going to go up and up and up. So here in Hutchinson, where can data centers go? And here in Hutchinson, we have land use zoning, and so certain uses can only be in certain areas of the community. And when it comes to data centers, the only place that they're allowed in Hutchinson would be in those areas that are zoned I-2, which is heavy industry. And in Hutchinson, we only have 2 places where there is I-2 zoning. One is in the industrial park on 5th Avenue Southeast, and then the other one would be on Adams Street out past 3M. So this particular data center, it's going to end up on 5th Avenue Southeast, 1025 5th Avenue, and that's where it'll be built here probably, my understanding is this year, 2026 project. So how big is this data center going to be? Most data centers, or a lot of them that you hear of these days, are extraordinarily large, and they just take up acres and acres of space. And in our particular case here in Hutchinson, this is going to be a very tiny data center. The building itself, it's only about a little bit more than 7,000 square feet. And just for reference, that would be basically, if you were to take 3 ordinary houses and put them together, that would be about 7,200 square feet. So I mean, it's basically the size of 3 houses. So in the scheme of things, as a data center goes, this one is very, very small. So it'll be 7,200 square foot. It's going to be an ordinary metal building, be located on 5th Avenue Southeast. And then right next to the building, there'll be a fenced-in area where it's going to have coolers. And that's how they're going to keep the computers cool inside. One question that comes up a lot is, will the data center use lots of electricity? And in this particular case, it's going to use an enormous amount of electricity. If you take Hutchinson as a whole, the entire community, the whole city only uses about 100 megawatts of electricity. And in that scheme, 3M is the biggest user at 15 megawatts. So with the data center coming in, that's going to increase our total electrical usage in Hutchinson by 20%, because by itself, the data center is going to use 20 megawatts of electricity. It's going to become the single largest power user in the community. And the community as a whole is going to go from 100 megawatts to 120 megawatts. That's a pretty big jump. And so, answer to this question, absolutely. It's going to use a huge amount of electricity, but that's modern technology. A question that goes then with that, I guess, is if it's going to use so much electricity, is this going to have an impact on my electric bill? And the answer there is no, not at all. It won't affect anybody's electric bill in any way. The data center is going to pay for its own electricity. Hutchinson Utilities has the capacity that they can provide the electricity that this data center will need, so it's not going to have any impact whatsoever on homeowners or other businesses or anything. Basically, all it's going to boil down to is that Hutchinson Utilities is just going to have another very large customer to sell electricity to. And that probably works in our favor, actually, because they're going to derive a lot of revenue off of this, so they won't need to raise revenue from other sources. So our own electric bills will not be affected by this in any way at all. Another question that often gets asked with respect to data centers is whether or not they use a lot of water. And there are some of them that use immense amounts of water, but not the one that's coming to Hutchinson. It's going to use what's called a closed loop system. So it's just going to have some piping in it that's going to be filled with antifreeze, actually. The antifreeze will circulate through the computers to help keep them cool. And then as that happens, the antifreeze itself is going to get hot. It's going to go outside of the building to where they have these cooling fans. The cooling fans will blow the heat off of these pipes and so forth. That will lower the temperature of the antifreeze, and then it will go back into the building and cool the computers again. So it's a closed loop system and will not be a significant user of water. It will not generate wastewater or anything like that. One question that comes up is, has there been an environmental impact study done for this thing? And when it comes to data centers, it's not really required. You know, an environmental impact study, usually that comes in the place where there's going to be a lot of smoke or something coming off of a building, or wastewater, or other external outputs. And with respect to the data center, it's going to have none of those. I mean, it won't generate nothing's going to be generated by the building at all. So with that being the case, an environmental impact study is not required because it's not going to affect the external environment in any meaningful way. The next question is, is this data center going to be noisy? Because some of them can be quite noisy. And I suppose earlier generations of data centers were noisy. This one is not going to be so bad. One of the things that we did here in Hutchinson is that we allowed the data center to be built, but then we have a conditional use permit in place, and I'll explain that shortly. But we're going to be requiring that the data center stays below the Minnesota state standard for noise pollution. And then we're also requiring these guys to do a preliminary noise study as the data center is coming online. And then after it's been in operation for 6 months, we'll require another noise study just so that they can document that the noise level generated is below the state standard here in the state of Minnesota. So we're going to take steps to make sure that this is not too obtrusive to the neighbors. Like I said, it's allowed to happen. You know, we put the data center in the I-2 zoning with a conditional use permit. So then the question becomes, well, what's a conditional use permit? The conditional use permit, that just allows a property owner to use their lot for a purpose that might not be totally permitted by the zoning, but which could be made suitable if certain conditions were met. So in this case, we got to mitigate the noise. And if they mitigate the noise that comes off of this thing, then the I-2 zoning is appropriate. So that's where the conditional use permit comes into play. So the conditions that the city put in place is that, number one, for this project, they can't have any substantial or undue adverse effect to adjacent properties or the neighborhood. Cannot have any negative effects for the neighbors. And then the second condition is, like I said, the noise mitigation is required. It absolutely has to be below the Minnesota state standard for noise, and they'll have to document this with 2 separate noise studies. So we're going to keep close tabs on this project to make sure that it's not adversely affecting the area where it's located. So that's really it for the data center. I understand that maybe people might have other questions, and if you do, I want to encourage you, certainly feel free to give me a call anytime. There's my number on the screen. I'll be happy to answer any questions that you might have. In our next segment, we're going to talk a little bit about the state of Hutchinson and how we compare with other cities our size around the state of Minnesota. So stay tuned for that. Welcome back to Hutchinson Economic Developments. In this final segment, we're going to talk a little bit about the state of the city, a little bit about Hutchinson and how it compares to other regional centers, other cities our size around Minnesota. So first item I have here is just how we're doing employment-wise here in town. And this is really fairly unchanged over the last decade. In 2015 or so, we had maybe 7,300 or so people employed, and as of 2025, that number not radically changed, about 7,400, close to 7,500. So over the course of 10 years, we've really only gained about 209 additional employed people in Hutchinson. And that number would be quite a bit higher actually, but we've had several layoffs from a large company that helped push our number down. But still, even now in 2026, we're still at a point where we have more jobs than people. I've got a number of job openings I can't get filled now because we simply don't have the employees available. On this chart here, this shows average monthly unemployment in Hutchinson over the last decade. And you can see in 2014, it was 3.9% unemployment here in town. And then last year, 2025, 3.9% unemployment. So not a lot of change. The big peak in the middle there, that came during the COVID pandemic. But overall, over the last decade, we've had extraordinarily low levels of unemployment. A healthy unemployment rate in a city, or anywhere really, is 5%. And that, a lot of times, that's just people in between jobs. They might be working somewhere, get a new job, maybe they take 3 weeks off in between. You know, that's the unemployment rate, basically. But here in Hutchinson, as you can see, over the last decade, it's been quite very tight labor market and just not enough people for all the jobs that we have. As of today, I would estimate that there's at least 100, potentially up to 150 job openings in Hutchinson that we cannot find a person to fill that job. So that's a significant challenge. Switching gears a little bit now, this is looking at rental, market rate rental for apartments, vacancy rates. And so a healthy vacancy rate for apartments, that's anywhere from 5 to 8%. And that just gives you enough selection out there so that when a person is looking for a new place to live, that they can shop around and pick the one that's the best fit for them. Now, for most of the last decade, we've had vacancy rates that have been practically non-existent. And that's actually an unhealthy housing market. So very, very low vacancy rates. The 3 bars there that you see that are the tallest, those were years where a new apartment complex came online, and then those apartments filled up, and then the vacancy rate went back down to a very small level. So overall, we have a very, very tight rental market here in Hutchinson for apartments. And that's one of the factors that drives up the cost or the rental rates of these apartments. So we just don't have enough supply. Switching gears to look at home prices. This is median home sales prices in Hutchinson over the last decade. So the median number, that is the one that just falls in the middle. So half of the prices are above the number, the other half are below the number, and the median is the number that resides in the middle of all that. So as you can see there on the left-hand side, 2014, the median home sales price was $138,000 or so. And then now in 2024, that's been over $300,000 is the median sales price. So pretty healthy increase over the last decade. It really just goes to show that owning a house, that's a really good investment, because the value of that, or the sales price of that, goes up about 10.5% every year. So that makes a good investment. The downside of that, though, is that because it's a good investment, it doesn't necessarily get resold that much. So here we have home resales in Hutchinson over the last decade, and the big takeaway here is that the number just keeps going down. And compared to a decade ago, we're down probably about a third by the number of homes getting resold each year. And because there's so few homes out there, that is driving up the price of the homes. So low housing supply equals higher prices. So those two kind of go together. So we have a shortage of apartments in Hutchinson. We have a shortage of single-family housing. And the reality is we have a shortage of every type of housing in Hutchinson. It's a real challenge for us as a community. Switching gears a little bit, this is just looking at how Hutchinson compares to other regional centers. So examples of regional centers, there's 19 of them in Minnesota. So this would be towns like Albert Lea or Alexandria or New Ulm or Worthington or Marshall or Hibbing, like that. And Hutchinson is in that group. So among that group of 19 regional centers, the percentage of population that's below the poverty level in Hutchinson, we're at 10.6%, which makes us the 4th lowest in that category of the 19 regional centers. So that means we're doing really good. We have a comparatively low number of people below the poverty level. And part of this is because we have a lot of high-paying manufacturing jobs. People have pretty good incomes. So this one is median household income. Again, median, so that means half of the household incomes are above the number, the other half are below that number. So here in Hutchinson, our median household income is a little bit more than $71,000. That puts us 3rd best among the 19 regional centers. So again, compared to our peer cities, we're doing really good. I mean, we're in a pretty darn good place. Finally, looking at median home value, as you might guess, pretty high number, $295,000 here in Hutchinson. That puts us as the 6th highest among the 19 regional centers. So here in Hutchinson, we have high home values, we have high incomes, we have low poverty level, we have a very low unemployment rate. So overall, we're doing quite well, especially compared to other cities of similar size. So even with all of that good news, we still have huge challenges. And the biggest ones right now are, probably number one on the list is just shortage of workforce. We simply don't have enough bodies to fill all the jobs that we have. I need anywhere from 100 to 150 more people just to fill the jobs that we have today. And then companion with that is we don't have enough people with the right skill sets. So that contributes to the problem as well. Childcare shortage is pretty dramatic here in Hutchinson. The last data that I saw shows that we need probably 300 or more additional childcare slots that we don't have today. So we have work to be done there. And then, as I mentioned, we're short of housing of every category, from beginner apartments to the move-up apartments to beginner house to bigger house. We're short on all of those. So we've got quite a bit to work on. We're doing good in some respects, and we have some significant challenges in other respects. So plenty of work for me to be doing. So that's it for this week. If you have any questions about anything, certainly feel free to give me a call. I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have. And yeah, thanks for visiting us here on Hutchinson Economic Developments, and we'll look for you next time.